What is up, Raider Nation? Your buddy Murf back once again for what we trust will be a fantastic episode of Raiders Fan Radio. This is episode number 356, maybe? I don't know. I have to go back and look. But anyways, of Raiders Fan Radio, and appreciate all of those of you that are joining us here for the show, especially all of those of you that are in the chat room. Everybody that's joining us on the YouTubes at youtube.com/Raiders Fan Radio. Appreciate you so very, very much for that. And also those of you that are checking in and joining us on the audio version of the podcast. Appreciate you as well. You can find that audio podcast on any audio podcast service just by searching Raiders Fan Radio. You can also ask your internet-connected device like your, well, I won't name it so that way they don't go off, but you know what they are. Just ask it and it'll play Raiders Fan Radio. So clearly, we're not live. This is pre-recorded, and clearly I'm not on site, and I don't even have a fan cave anymore. Although we're getting closer to getting that thing construction underway. But yeah, and I'm doing a selfie. I'm solo tonight, which you guys know I don't love to do a selfie. But there's a couple of things I wanted to get to, and so that's why I'm doing this. But anyways, called out of town for the day job, and very thankful for that, by the way. And so anyways, here doing Raiders Fan Radio, just a little quick thing to come at you I forgot to tell you guys last week that we weren't going live this week. So anyways, just a quick little check-in here, and then we'll see you live for sure next week. And if you want to join us live, like I said, join us at youtube.com/Raiders Fan Radio. Whoops. Come back on. Or join us live at Raiders Fan Radio. Let's see my reflection. There we go. Raiders Fan Radio. And we go live each and every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. So thank you again for checking us out. So a couple things came out today that I wanted to kind of jump on, and then I want to read an email. We got an email from Sir Paul, and I want to read Paul's email. But before we get to that, a couple things came out today. Number one, I'm wearing my Las Vegas The Boys shirt because shout out to Bussin' with the Boys guys. They had Coach Gruden in the studio today, and it looks like Gruden is going to be on the next episode of Bussin' with the Boys, which would be very interesting. And despite what you think of Gruden, obviously no excuse for some of the words that he used and the intent behind them. Never going to be an excuse for that. And I think that the right decision was made when Mark Davis' hand was forced. But he did move on from Coach Gruden, and it was completely warranted. But that said, I still like Gruden, the personality, man. I think, Gruden as a play caller and as an offensive coach, I think there's still a lot of merit there based on his accomplishments. Not a personnel guy, clearly. But in terms of him as a coach and him as a personality, I still, enjoy watching and listening to Coach Gruden. So anyways, so that leads me then to the next thing. So Gruden on Bussin' with the Boys, and then Mark Davis is interviewed today, and they asked him about his intent behind the head coach. I believe it was Deshaun Reed. So shout out to Deshaun Reed for getting the quotes, and the quotes basically were, I've not settled on a coach for next year. That's going to be there's not enough yet for me to make up my mind. I'll decide that in the off season. And then the follow-up portion of that is, well, what's going to go on then with Tom Telesco? Is this going to be a collective decision made? And he said, no, I will evaluate them independently. Well, that's enough tea leaves for me, man, based on losing 9 straight and everything else his team has gone through, coupled with poor decision making and all that whatnot. I think Antonio Pierce is going to be a one and done. And first and foremost, that was never what I wanted for this football team. Didn't want it for that man. No one championed him to be our next head coach any harder than what myself and Swag Jeff and Michelle, and much respect to Swag Jeff and Michelle, I miss you guys. But no one championed him more than we did here at Raiders Fan Radio. And I still, as I mentioned on the last show, have a ton of respect for Antonio Pierce. I love the way that he embodies the Raiders spirit. I love the way that he represents the Raiders unapologetically. And he really, really owns that persona. And so I still have a ton of respect for that. That said, I don't think he's a very good head coach. And I think that it's time for the Raiders to move on. But that time is not right now. You're not going to move on from him in the middle of the season. It doesn't accomplish anything. And so here we go entering this offseason with this independent evaluation from Mark Davis of Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce. So that being said, so writing's on the wall, right? Well, so to tie the two things together, could Gruden be in the mix? And I kind of I told you guys a little bit about a conversation that we overheard and had with some folks at the Blitnikoff Foundation event just a few months ago. And it was thrown out there that, like, don't be surprised if John Gruden is back in the mix for the Raiders this coming offseason should Antonio Pierce be let go and the team follow on the same trajectory that it has been in recent months. And this is back in September. So, that said, I don't think it's going to happen, and I'm not championing it, nor am I opposed to it. I kind of feel indifferent about Gru because I think that there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. There's not only the lawsuit against the NFL, there is obviously the questionable things that he put in emails. There is would he be willing to cede control to Tom Telesco and not be involved in personnel decisions? Like, I think there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. And then you couple that with the idea that, as I mentioned, he's going to be on Bussin' with the Boys probably. I don't know if he is or not, but he was in the studio, which I know. So I'm assuming he's going to be on the next one. But that said, he's part of Barstool Sports now and doing well. And he's well received. And he's got his own YouTube channel. You know, he's bringing on former players like George Atkinson to interview, doing all of his film breakdowns. Like, the guy is thriving right now in his media career. So it wouldn't shock me one bit if Gruden gets bypassed over at least for another couple of years and then enters back into the NFL as a little more time gets spread out. Could that be a Saints job? Could that be, there's a lot of other options out there that would be attractive, I think, to John Gruden. Heck, if it keeps going the way it's going for Brian Callahan in Tennessee, John's got Tennessee connections. His wife does. So, wouldn't surprise me if see him in Nashville or something, coaching the Titans. So there's a lot of opportunities and things that are going to evolve, but I don't think that stuff is now. So all that said, you guys know all the popular names. I'm rooting for him. You're rooting for him. Speaking of the Titans, maybe it's Mike Vrabel. Maybe it's Drew Petzig. Maybe it's the guy, I always forget his name, but the one that Mo is championing. Mo from Silver and Black Today is championing the guy from the Buccaneers. Like, there's going to be a lot of options out there for the Raiders. Anybody that was sweating it, thankfully the Bill Belichick thing seems like it's off the table as he's closing in on finalizing a deal with North Carolina to go coach that team. That's going to be interesting to watch. Non-Raider related, that's going to be interesting because I don't know if you guys heard him, but he was like, I'm going to build this program with the intent to send these guys to the NFL. You don't think that's a freaking attractive, super attractive recruiting tool? Like, that's going to be crazy. If you got a guy that's got the bona fides and the rings of Bill Belichick that's bringing in players to North Carolina specifically with the intent of I'm going to prepare you for the NFL, watch North Carolina freaking do something here in the next 3 to 4 years. But anyways, all that said, one last thing. Also, Mark Davis in that same interview with Tashawn Reed said, I'm not going to give a mandate, or there is no mandate out there for the Raiders to draft a quarterback. That I thought was interesting because Tom Telesco hit a home run on this last draft, which I don't think anybody can dispute. But we also don't have a quarterback. And so I think that was a glaring misstep. And I don't think that happens again. And I don't think Telesco would survive not getting a franchise quarterback a second time around. So while there may not be a, quote, mandate on it, I don't see a world where we don't end up with a franchise quarterback, especially if we're picking him number one or at least in the top 3. So anyways, so that's all my thoughts on the coaching stuff and everything that's going on. Then on the heels of all of that, I wanted to get on here and read you an email that comes from our buddy Paul. So, of course, the legendary Paul Edgerton in Shropshire, Mississippi. He's actually not in Mississippi. He's in Shropshire, England. But the reason that we say Shropshire, Mississippi, an old joke, if you guys hadn't heard it yet, the old joke is that Shropshire is west of Birmingham. Well, in the United States, west of Birmingham is Mississippi. So I joked that Shropshire was in Mississippi. And so it's funny, some of our friends that actually are, and listeners like the Graveses that are actually down in Mississippi even said to us one time, like, I went and looked to try to find Shropshire on the map because I thought you guys were actually talking about Mississippi. But no, that was just my dopey joke. So anyways, Paul in Shropshire, Mississippi /UK/England writes us fantastic emails each and every week, and we always read them. But being that we're not doing the normal formal show, we're not doing the normal show, we didn't have an opportunity to do voicemails and emails, but Paul reached out and he's like, I got to talk to you about this Gruden thing. And I got an email for the show this week. And I said, well, Paul, darn it, we don't have a forum to talk about it. And I said, but you know what? Send it to me. I said, I'm going to take some time out while I've got a break here during my work event here. And I'm going to read your email. And so here's Paul. And it's titled, Chucky My Ass. Evening, everybody. I hope you're feeling as well as you can in these troubled Raider times. I've got very little to say about Sunday, really. It was about the same as many times before. We looked okay in certain areas, but in other areas let us down. I refuse to congratulate players on their effort. That's the least they can do. I agree. That's expected. Like, you don't get congratulated for freaking doing what you're supposed to do. But it is nice to see that there's some spirit left in the group. However, it was another game without 20-plus points and another inept coaching afternoon. 1 target for Brock Bowers in the first half and 5 in total? Really? I'm quite emotional watching it. I hate this is happening again. Our souls are taking a beating every week, and it's agony watching it unfold this way. Despite what I've previously said about AP, his future, I hate seeing things play out like this for him. I really wanted him to be the man, but it's clearly too big of a job for him at this stage of his career. I could go on, and you all know the details with AOC injured now, and Ritter and Bradley on the horizon. Shout out Carter Bradley season. Let's go. I told you it was going to finally freaking happen. And I know he's a backup, but hey, if it doesn't go well for Ritter, it's CB14 time. Bradley on the horizon and a number 1 pick in Green Bay next April is closer to being ours. Ritter and Bradley will do their best, but that should see it done for the year. Sorry if it seems too negative to 1 or 2 in the chat, but that's just realism for y'all. Well, I'm on that point. I've had a few people sniping at me on social media about my views on our current head coach, the need to not keep firing coaches every year. I understand the point. And in a utopian situation, we would have AP for 1,000 successful years, but following your logic, we would still have Josh McDaniels in charge. And personally, I'm sick of seeing another bad coach, and I think it's better we keep swinging until we find one, much like our search for a QB. Damn, Paul, that was well said. Elsewhere, I voted for the Pro Bowl this week. I had specific criteria that you might like to follow in case you haven't cast your votes yet. Vote for all the Raiders players first, irrespective of their performance. Do not, under any circumstance, vote for anyone from the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Steelers, or 49ers. Vote as many times as you can for Devontae Adams because we need the extra draft pick. Well done, my man. And finally, one of the worst things I've seen this season amongst many is the reemergence of John Gruden. Numerous websites and podcasts have started parading him around, and it does, sadly, look like he'll be back in the game somewhere. My only hope is that it's not with the Raiders in any capacity. I wouldn't let him work in the parking lot, and I wouldn't let him wear Raiders merch if he tried to buy it at the Raider image. This man has always been overhyped and deserves nothing. Harsh words, Paul. And before people scream at me that he won a Super Bowl, no, I already know what you're going to say. Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl. Well, I know Tony Dungy really won. Tony Dungy won 2 Super Bowls, actually. Where am I at? Oh, man, where'd I go? Dang it, Paul, I interrupted you. Oh, and before people scream at me that he won a Super Bowl, save your breath. We all know the details of that day, and I could have coached a win against the Raiders under those circumstances. Truth, brother. It's Bill Callahan's fault is why we lost that game. Because he didn't change the offense, didn't change the calls, didn't change anything, protections, none of it, and he was playing against the guy that invented the offense on the other side of the freaking sideline. Stupid. He called Raiders, Bill Callahan called us the stupidest team in America. He's the stupidest friggin' coach in America going into that game and not changing things up from what Gruden did. That was so dumb. Anybody that talks shit about Rich Gannon, F off with that. Rich Gannon, we threw 5 picks. Yeah, because Derek Brooks knew exactly what he was going to do with the football, what play they were in every single time he dropped back. Like, so the fact that he freaking even had any completions is fantastic. Blaming Rich Gannon. Blaming an MVP, like all of a sudden you just stop being an MVP and you just decide you're going to throw 5 picks because you suck. Lame. Anyway, back to Paul. I digress. How could some in Raider Nation say that it's a young man's game these days and preach fresh ideas and want this turd back? Keep him away at all costs, please. In all that's holy, don't let that odious, fake little shit back in the room. I've suffered enough this year without having to support him if he came back. Just let him take his phony tough guy act off to his squad. Off to a squalid backwater school somewhere, and let him live out his time thinking he was a success. Ooh, Paul. Early kickoff Tuesday morning for the Falcons, 1 a.m. Oh, yeah, because Paul's in Shropshire, England. 1:30 a.m., but despite being 2-11, I wouldn't miss it for the world. And that's why we love you, Paul. Stay safe, RFR family. Love your Raider Nation. His Lordship, the Royal Scribe, Paul Edgerton, Shropshire, Mississippi, Polly Award winner 2019 and 2022, Foggy Glasses Award winner 2020, Man of the Year in 2024, BRT Sizzler Scorekeeper, Proud Made Man, 5-time, times 4 plus 4, winner of the Raiders Fan Radio BRT Sizzler Award. Give it up for Paul. Great job, Paul. Yeah, harsh words there from Paul, which is one of the things that he said. He's like, if this is Gruden stuff, you're not going to like my email. That's the beauty about all this stuff, man, about this Raider talk and all this football stuff and all that. Like, we don't all have to agree. And while I think that there could be a favorable way John Gruden could reintroduce into being a part of the Raiders, and it wouldn't shock me if one day that happened. Mark Davis loves him some John Gruden. So aside from what my fan opinion or anybody else's fan opinion is, I know what Mark thinks of the guy. We all know what Mark thinks of the guy. And so that being said, it wouldn't shock me. But also, Paul, I'm so with you, dude. Like, because of the way that I let it off, with the amount of baggage that's out there. And frankly, again, you're right. I mean, the game, I don't know if it's passed him by. I don't know if I'd want to tag him with that yet. It certainly personnel did. But as far as, just operating the game, it's time for something fresh. And I think that's ultimately what we all want with this team, is that we want a fresh reset, a hard reset. We're already going to have somewhat of a reset when it comes to ownership. We already know we're going to probably have some sort of a reset when it comes to quarterback. So let's go ahead and do head coach. Front office, we don't need it. Front office is fine. Telesco did great, right? Champ Kelly, by all accounts, has done great. You go to the business side of the world, Sandra Douglas Morgan, phenomenal. Like, there's those parts of the Raiders, doesn't look like we need anything major overhaul or change. But when it comes to the freaking coaching staff, I say we run it all out. Like, let's go ahead and hit the reset button on all of it. We'll draft our quarterback, do the best we can to try to trade back into the round. Dream scenario would be snag Travis Hunter. Equally, if not better, dream scenario would be grab Ashton Genty to complement our quarterback. I joked earlier today on X. I said, if you got a quarterback and one of those two other guys, you could spend the rest of our draft picks on nachos and we would still win 10 games next year. Like, it's insane the amount of potential that's coming up for the Raiders. So instead of turning it over to the same old guard, that's not the same old guard. I know some of them have been short timers, but it's too. This is too valuable and too unique, and there's too much potential in these possibilities to trust it with what we've seen over the past 13 plus weeks. I guess that's ultimately where I come out. So, anyways, thank you, Raider Nation. Thank you guys for jumping on here for this quick little live sort of premiere thing, whatever this is. I'll upload it, and I uploaded it because you're watching it. But anyways, thank you guys for checking us out. YouTube.com/Raiders Fan Radio. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit a thumbs up. Please don't forget that everything you do to support this show supports our nonprofit, which is the One Nation Foundation. We give strictly to Raiders-related charities. Had a nice conversation with Angela Bolitnikoff yesterday. Talked about kind of what we got coming up for 2025. Congratulations to them for opening the new Tracy's Place of Hope there in Southern Nevada. Also the Boletnikoff Center of Hope, that is not only are they providing the rehabilitative services, but now they're providing the counseling services for young women at risk of domestic violence and substance abuse. So it's just an incredible charity, an incredible foundation, and that's 100% of the money that we make around here goes to support organizations like that. And we can't do that without your generosity, not only in your direct donations, but again, hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit us on the audio podcast, rate it, review it, anything you can do to help promote that. It's not about promoting our show, it's about promoting the foundation, so we can get some more advertising dollars like the good folks at Underdog and give all that money away. So thank you, Raider Nation. Love you guys so very, very much. We will see you next week.